council meeting. And this evening, we'll start with roll call, please. Phyllis Bowman.
Councilor Belt.
Here.
Councilor Carey.
Here.
Councilor Lopez.
Here.
Councilor Salinas.
Here.
And Mayor Kuntz.
Here. And also with us, Teresa Ozias from the law firm of Shetterly Eric Ozias is our backup city attorney and counsel. Thank you, Teresa, for joining us this evening. Hopefully we won't give you any like we had. So we will. We will start with the flag salute. And Carol, this evening. Thank you, Councillor Oberst, for the motion and Councillor Belts for the second. And all in favor of approval of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? Great, thank you very much. For Mayor's report this evening, I have been spending an inordinate amount of time the last 10 days particularly being immersed in sort of the world of COVID vaccine acquisition, distribution, planning, and much of that is things that you all are familiar with, hopefully, which is the vaccination priorities in our state have dictated really so far that health workers, first line workers, emergency responders, really were in that, and folks in congregate care settings were really in those first groups to get vaccinated. The intent was to start vaccinating larger groups this week, and that was dependent on information that the state had gotten regarding availability of the national stockpile of vaccines. So we were supposed to get our regular supply plus a surge supply. And on Friday, the governor held a press conference to announce that when the states were pressing about when to expect the surge supply, they were told there actually is no stockpile of vaccines at the federal level, and we would be getting probably our normal dosages this week. So what that means for our community, the Salem Health has been doing and is prepared to continue doing mass vaccination clinics. Right now, the state fairgrounds in Salem is the site of a mass vaccination clinic. Their availability, their open hours, and who they are serving varies. So today, for example, it was anybody who lives or works in Marion County only. But they got a waiver to start giving vaccines to some of the groups that were prioritized as 1B, including educators who live or work in Marion County. So Polk County, not quite at that same level. They are our health partner here, which is also Salem Valley Hospital, have been working and doing vaccine clinics at the Polk County Fairground. They had a couple of dates. They worked over the weekend on those. But as of yesterday, they only had a few doses left. And then they are going to have to wait until they get another shipment of vaccines. They were out at Polk County Fairgrounds, but they, because of limited internet access out there, they were having issues with the work that they have to do to upload information about their vaccines and data that they have to collect on folks. So they actually are moving, and when they get a new supply of vaccines, they will open up at Western Oregon University. So they will be in the Pacific room there. They will have well-marked routes for people to come in, park, get screened, whether or not they are eligible for the vaccine, because it's, again, with now more limited supplies, they are going to have to stick very closely to the state guidelines of the order of who can get vaccinated. So they will, their intention is to continue at Western as much as possible. Right now, Western is about a week away from determining whether or not they will have spring classes more in person, or if they will continue in their current format, which has very limited. So there'll be more you're ready for the vaccine. Really going to the Polk County Health Department website, but actually going to the Salem Health website and their COVID-19 vaccination page. You say whether you live or work in Marion County or live or work in Polk County, and it will give you information about those vaccine clinics. So some disappointing news, but our county health department and Salem Health are really in some ways leading the state in how to do this work. And I feel confident that we will have better news in the coming weeks about how we can get more vulnerable folks in our county and our community vaccinated. So that has been taking up a lot of time. So that is my general report. The other thing this evening that to bring to you is our budget committee appointments. And unfortunately, I did not forgot to send this out to all of you until right before the meeting. So you should have an email from Phyllis that includes this report. We ended up with 5 openings on the budget committee. So out of 7 members, we only have 2 budget committee members returning from last year. Of the 7 resident representatives, those who live here in the community and have equal standing to the council and making up the budget committee. Rebecca, thank you very much. Councillor Salinas Oliveros had volunteered to review the applications with me. We had 6 applicants. And so we actually created a little bit of a scoring system and reviewed the applicants against that. We had, in setting our, what we wanted to see, we really wanted to look for diversity. And I am extremely pleased that we received applications that included 2 women, which we don't always have a lot of women on the budget committee, included a couple of folks, younger people, because again, we get a lot of us who are retired and have more time to give in some ways, but we have a couple of younger applicants and folks with different lengths of time in the community. We saw a lot of value in that. So those things, along with their information regarding their background, their experiences, and really what they saw as their role on the budget committee, were the way that we ranked those applicants. And we have a recommendation. We would like to offer a slate of budget committee members to you. And those would be Bev Beard Leeper, Leslie Lloyd, Jonathan Media, Bill Horner, and Randy Lowry. That gives us some folks who have been on other committees for the city or boards or commissions, folks with some prior experience in our local government, and some couple of newer folks to the community. So that is our recommendation to you. And at this time, I'm sure Rebecca or I would entertain any questions you have. Seeing none. Chris, Councillor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much, Councillor Salinas Oliveros, for taking up the legwork here. I appreciate the thoughtfulness involved in this this process, and really are looking forward to, as you said, additional diversity as we move into this next budgeting session. Hopefully that diversity will better represent our wonderful little town here. I do have a question, more than anything, I wanted to express my thanks to you, but a question regarding how the individuals that also indicated an appetite for planning commission were handled within the ranking here. I do see that there are 2 individuals that were interested in both budget and planning.
Yes, so I spoke to both of those individuals just to specifically on that point, and both actually indicated they would be willing to serve on either planning or budget, or both, since budget is a very limited duration assignment. And so that really was not necessarily part of the ranking. Just a notice that because we do have an opening on planning and we will be reviewing the applicants for that, both of those folks would also potentially be considered in that pool as well.
And as we keep thinking about how to improve our systems, we can consider, is this something that as a council, we want to consider allowing volunteers to volunteer for more than one committee? Or do we feel that's not, maybe gives them time, as well, or the different perspectives that we want on these commissions. So this could be a broader discussion once we really realize what we want in our systems.
I appreciate that. Is that discussion slated for a future work session?
Yes, I'll bring that forward as we go through this process and really kind of refine how it worked for us. I mean, we don't usually have too many applicants. We don't usually have the luxury of deciding amongst applicants, but I feel very hopeful with this diverse pool and the kind of recruitment I think that we can all start doing, that we'll see more of an opportunity to have those discussions as well about how people are able to serve.
Yeah, and I appreciate that we are considering looking at our systems differently. I couldn't help myself. I mean, this is what I do at Chemeketa, is prepare people for the workplace. So I put in the rubric and the numbers and the strengths and weaknesses and trying to be objective and equitable. And so these are some things that we can also look at and discuss if it's something that we want to do for a work session.
This is John. I think a tremendous step forward in the way we look at this. I think we do need to. I don't have any idea what the criteria was, and we've got a ranking which suggests that you were able to prioritize one over the other. I think we ought to talk about what that. Not now. I'm happy with where we are. But as we look at it, what was the criteria? What was you talk about a rubric, what were the cells for that? And what were the, I read the description of what we would like in terms of the outcome. I don't know how we weighed expertise, experience in the financial realm. We got one member on the that's returning, thank goodness, that's really sharp on that stuff and has really helped. I don't know whether any of the others are or not. I just simply don't know. I'm trusting both of your judgments, but I think we can refine the process because I think it's huge that we do this. I think it's great, and I think we can take this opportunity to make it better.
Mm-hmm. And John, you're asking all the right questions and all of the things that we need to look at. And, and if you have specific questions about some of them, we could try to answer those for you. But yes, that's exactly where we need to move towards.
I would have moved appointing the top 5 people on this list. I wrote them down. Bev Beard Leeper, Leslie Lloyd, Jonathan Media, Bill Horner, and Randy Lowry to the Budget Committee for this upcoming round of our budget work.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Oberst, for the motion and Councillor McKeel for the second. And all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, thank you. Let these folks know that our finance director is ready to get them to work, starting with an orientation coming up soon and going through our budget process. So thank you all very much, and especially thanks, Rebecca, very helpful. Again, as she said, not knowing a lot of the folks, right? But just looking at their applications and their work and sort of their viewpoints on things. she had a great perspective on this. I appreciate the help. And speaking of, oh, John. No, you turned your mic off again, though. So.
I was just going to say, Councilor Carey raised the issue of expertise, and I know that by the time Janet's done with them, they'll be total experts in local budget. I'm not concerned about that going forward.
That's right. So speaking of that, boards and commissions, do we have any reports?
I do. Roxanne does. Roxanne, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Oberst. So I have two reports. The library board met January 13th, 7 a.m. in the morning via Zoom. And just a couple things to report. We did get approved by our city attorney. We have a launch pad table, and we created a borrowing agreement. And so the city attorney looked it over, made a couple tweaks just to make sure people can check those out and that we're covered. CCRLS, which I would love to remember what that means, but basically that's the overarching library group. They received a grant to purchase some mobile hotspots for library members. And so Monmouth is going to receive 10 hotspots. And what that means is it's a device that can be checked out as a hotspot. And so it's something that will not be discoverable within the library catalog. They'll need to advertise that they have those hotspots available. The library is purchasing something called Playaway, which is for adults. It is a small device similar to an audiobook. It's the next generation of audiobooks. The seed library is going to open later this month. It will be all virtual. A form listing all the available types of seeds will be created, placed on the library's website. People fill out and submit the form and they request the seeds. Then the seeds can be picked up during the regular curbside pickup hours. And a patron can select 10 packets of seeds per week. That's an awful lot of seeds. That's exciting. And lastly, the board decided for the next 2 meetings, they will be held every other month virtually. So at the May meeting, they will reconsider how often they want to meet. And my other report is from the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments Board of Directors. We did announce our selection of Scott Dadson as the new executive director. He is filling the vacancy that was created when Sean O'Day resigned and ended up going to work for the Veterans Affairs in February. We had a nationwide search. We had a tremendously drawn out selection process, as very similar to our city manager selection process. COVID got in the way. But Scott has an incredibly diverse background. He's got 30 years in city management in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. Most recently, Scott served as the executive director of the Isothermo Regional Commission in the foothills of North Carolina, which is actually a very similar regional organization to the COG. He has an MBA from Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, and he also served as an adjunct facility in the architecture and urban design program at Savannah College of Art and Design. So he is very excited. He should be starting in February. That concludes my report.
Wow, great. Thank you. By the way, that is Chemeketa Cooperative Regional Library System. So it's the Marion Polk Yam Hill libraries that choose to join so that they can share materials. That's CCRLS.
Thank you. I will never remember that, but maybe one day I'll write it down.
Yeah, for some reason it just sticks. So Councilor Oberst and then Councilor Carey. John.
I clicked the thing. Sorry. On the 13th, I attended the Parks and Rec meeting, and Russ, correct me if I am mistaken here, but the choice, there was some leftover grant money from last year, and that's the piece I want to be sure I'm clear about. The commission decided to use to buy a bike rack. The first part of the discussion was where to put it, and Cherry Lane, Main Street Park, and Jello Woods all came up. Apparently, Cherry Lane is bereft of a bike rack. However, and Main Street, of course, is our most heavily used park. At the end of the day, the choice was Jello Woods, some kind of tubular steel powder-coated bicycle motif sort of thing, and Russ has a local area producer who will make that for us. But the nice thing is that the old bike rack that used to be in front of the old bike shop. It looked like an old high wheeler bicycle. The current occupant of that space asked that it be taken out, and so the city is going to refurbish that, and a decision on where it will go, Sherry Lane, I suppose, will be made in the future. So we'll basically 2 bike racks coming on the way. That was some old business. New business included Russ introducing a concept of a fitness court. And this would be a follow-on project once the skate park is up and running. So this was strictly introducing a concept to the commission. Fitness courts are about a half a basketball court in size and have a variety of simple exercises. Many are body weight oriented. A 7-minute 7 exercise workout, for example, is one that flashed past. This is something that's going on nationwide, and there's a group that's been doing this since I think it was 1989. That's trying to push these out across the country. So as I say, this was just introducing us to the concept, and I think we may hear more about that in the future. There was a fair amount of time spent on the grant application process. 2 items that came up. One was to strengthen the language around the notion of promoting a recreational activity in a Monmouth Park. The body really wants to focus on finding the recreation in Parks and Rec. So trying to strengthen the language that that's the preferred applicant is a recreational activity in a Monmouth Park. But the other interesting piece that came up was paying attention to the fact that we're still in the midst of COVID restrictions. And so the first thought was, so we give you a grant, how are you going to do that if you're still under COVID restrictions when it comes up? How are you going to handle that? What are your preparations for that eventuality? The second piece that was pointed out was wanting to be sure that if, in fact, we are under restrictions, how are you going to make sure that the participants in your activity actually follow the relevant guidelines about those restrictions that would be in place at that time. Russ has done the wordsmithing on that application. It has been posted on the city website on the Parks and Recs page, and applications are due on March 1st. So if there's anyone who who has an interest in applying for a Parks and Rec grant for an activity, preferentially a recreational activity in Monmouth Park, please tell them to go to the website and get that application downloaded and filled out and turned in by the 1st of March. And finally, we will be hearing an update on the skate park next time. I'll have information for you on that then.
Great.
Roxanne, you have a question?
Yes.
Yes, John, do you know offhand how much the grants are for?
I think they're maxed at 500 each. Is that right, Russ?
Suzanne.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Roxanne is about it.
Yeah, they're 500. I just looked at one today. I just looked at it today.
Okay. Great. Thanks very much for that. I'm glad they put you to work right away. Rebecca, you had a question or?
Actually, I have a historic commission update. We met on January 6th at 6 p.m. Over Zoom. And Suzanne, please fill in anything I forget. So really, there were 2 things that, 2 projects that are currently being researched and worked on. I think Suzanne told you about the consultant that's researching the house on 342 Monmouth Avenue to justify the location on the National Registry. So we talked a little bit about that, and there'll be more information to come. And then the other is a train mural project that the Historic Commission has been working on. And so we talked about some next steps, confirming the site, contacting local artists, thinking about the process for those proposals, and looking at grants and some financial resources for that. So it was a great group to be a part of.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining up with them. I'm going to go to Councillor Carey since he had his hand up earlier, and then Councillor McKeel.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council Planning Commission meets tomorrow night. There are 2 public hearings on additions to the Ash Creek Station. I don't know the details on those. I haven't reviewed the material. I won't be able to attend. There's more activity in that development. So that is all. And Councilor Oberst, if you and I could talk offline at some point, I've got some ideas that I'd like you to take forward to the Parks and Rec committee. So we can do that. It's nothing urgent, but I'd just like to talk with you offline. And that's my report.
Step out back after the meeting and give a yell, and I'll see if I can hear you, John. Otherwise, give me a call.
Great. Thank you. And then Councillor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This question is to Rebecca on the Historic Commission, and maybe this is a premature question, so you're welcome to just roll your eyes or tell me to come back later. You mentioned the train mural, and I was wondering if the Historic Commission is looking at guidance to give for that mural, as in a train makes me think that this is going to be dominated by white culture. And so my concern is, will the train mural be inclusive of all the different peoples that are in this area? And maybe this is too early, and please forgive me if it is.
No, that's a great question. I think that's something that maybe Suzanne and I and the Historic Commission can bring up the next time we meet to kind of give you a clearer answer.
Thank you. It was a premature question. I apologize.
No, it's a good question to think about. I appreciate it.
All right. Seeing no other reports, we will move to the city manager's report. Marty Wine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Council. I am going to share a couple of things that if you take along with Friday notes, you will probably have heard about some of these things already, but I just want to be sure that I'm mentioning them again so they're staying at some part of the top of your mind. You're going to be hearing from us, the staff perspective soon about the City Hall project on several fronts. We're putting together messages about the current conditions of the conditions of the current facility. And I think I let you know that our building official, Larry Thornton, is starring in a video, a walkthrough of our current building to talk about what's happening inside the building and what's not working about the building that we've got. So we've got a video, we've got some content that we're getting ready to put on the website. What we're producing is really about the world of the City Hall building as it exists today, and also the project that we are planning and what we plan to bring to voters. And my ask to you is going to be to take a look at that content, think about how you want to communicate, help us refine those messages. And then I think the goal will be that we will all together as a team, staff and council, and then a PAC, that a political action committee that forms outside of City Hall, will be able to talk about the project between now and May. So just wanted to get you ready for, we're going to be talking about City Hall a lot. I know that some of you have. And I'll also mention, even though we have a light agenda tonight, my hope is that our next meeting with FFA Architecture will be at the beginning of February, and we'll be talking about the state of the replacement for City Hall, the costs and the design, and so we'll have lots to talk about. Let's see, the other couple of items I'm hoping to mention, I think that I said a little bit about this in Friday notes, but on behalf of the finance director, some things that you should know are happening in the world of finance. We're going to be starting up municipal court proceedings again virtually beginning of February. And our judge and our attorney and our court clerk have been considering how to manage the 30 or so cases that have been stacking up since December. And so beginning in February, we'll begin to hold as much of a virtual version of court to get these proceedings going virtually. Also, our finance director on Friday had a ratings call with Standard & Poor's, our rating agency, regarding the refunding of the MyNet issue. And she was able to update them about the city's good financial position and also the good news as far as our booming construction and development that we're seeing in town, the impacts of COVID and the stability of most of our revenues. She's hopeful of maintaining our good A+ rating. And we should know the rating results on the 25th of the month. So coming up here soon, and then we can price the bonds for the refunding at the beginning of February. Also, for the finance director has been working really hard on our audit, our city audit, and you'll be hearing from our auditors at the end of February. What's going to happen in between is that our hope is to meet the mid-February deadline for the extension of our audit that we requested. So I won't go into a bunch of the details about the audit, but you'll be getting a report about that soon. Let's see, I think that the only other two things that I would mention, one, I'm sure that you already have on your calendar, City Council priority setting is coming up January 29th and 30th. And we have a facilitator whose name is Gary Stewart, who is going to be reaching out to each of you to ask you for a little bit of your time to think ahead about what our priorities should be for the coming year and how you will work together as a council. And some of you have already done your homework and turned it in. So thank you for the work that you've done to start to think ahead about your conversation all together when we meet at the end of the month. Let's see. And then finally, at our last meeting, January 5th, you heard from a person in our community. Her name was Victoria Ray. She spoke on public comment. She brought forward a concern that we had a practice of notifying landlords for electric utility accounts in arrears and believed that that was a violation of fair housing law. So I've had a chance to talk with Ms. Ray, and she and I got to talk through the concern, and she had called in on behalf of a neighbor. I was able to talk with her about what our current practice is, and it is to share accounts that are past due and owing with, we notify the landlord of that. And best that I know, that it's not actually a fair housing law rule violation, and the tenant signs a release when they open the account that is allowed to be done. So Ms. Ray and I are still talking about her concerns and the neighbors' concerns, but I'm quite certain that our procedures are not violating a fair housing rule. But she had some suggestions for us about ways that we could improve the communications for tenants and with landlords and accounts when they are owing. And we're looking at putting some of those, many of what she suggested, those suggestions we are already doing, but finance director and I are taking a look at her suggestions just to see if there's anything else we think we should implement to be as fair as possible to those folks. So I wanted you to know how that communication moved forward. I think that for today, that's all I have for a city manager report.
And Councilor Oberst, question.
Marty, the practice of notifying landlords is, in the big picture, relatively recent in Monmouth, and it was the result of landlords complaining about being surprised when people moved out and leaving large bills. This is, as I say, fairly recent history, and I can't remember if Cease and John Kerry were on board at the time that we spent way too many council hours hashing through all that. But for history's sake, you might look back at some minutes and see if you can, flesh out the background. But at one point, we had landlords asking us to charge a deposit equal to the likely utility bill for 2 months for a tenant. So they wanted us to charge a $600 or $800 deposit for electric service. Other landlords said no. So it was an interesting back and forth between the landlords and council and Manager McClure and the electric department and on and on. So just wanted to put that out there that it is fairly new practice.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I will take a moment for either council comments or community announcements, if anybody has anything before we adjourn our regular meeting. Rebecca?
Yes, I would just like to make a comment. Thank you, Madam Mayor and fellow council members. I want to comment on the horrific acts of violence that happened on Wednesday, January 6th, the insurrection of our United States Capitol. This insurrection of our Capitol by white supremacists, domestic terrorists, sadly did not surprise me or my family. We have and continue to experience and live through hateful and racist times. This was a disgusting display of white entitlement and acceptance of racism. These domestic terrorists had doors held open for them, were supported by congressmen and other public and political leaders, and were allowed to set up a noose outside the Capitol. This was a stark contrast to the Black Lives Matter protesters, people of color, people like me, people who are different, who are often met with fear, hate, and violence. This heinous act was a terrible reminder of our racist past and our present history. I keep hearing that this is not our America, but actually it is. Council McKeel shared an article with me by Ibram Kendi. And in this article in The Atlantic entitled, "Denial is the Heartbeat of America," he writes about pieces throughout our history where insurrections and domestic terrorism were committed by white supremacists, white Americans, and pro-slave supporters against equal rights, voter rights, against gay rights, and against people of color, people of difference, and women. It is our denial of racism that prevents us from being the America that we believe we are. It is our denial of racism that hold back people of color and underrepresented populations. Instead of saying, "This is not who we are," or "I'm not a racist," Kendi states that we should instead say, "This is precisely who we are, and we are ashamed, and we are aggrieved at what we've done, at how we let this happen. But we will change. We will hold the perpetrators accountable. We will change policy and practices. We will radically root out this problem. It will be painful, but without pain, there is no healing." So in conclusion, as we move into discussing our vision, our city goals, let's not deny the racism that lives in our city, and let's have the courage to say that we will change.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Salinas Oliveros.
Yeah, Councilor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I really want to thank Councilor Salinas Oliveros for her words. You know, I know with my family, I just am still in a state of disbelief that these things and there are acts closer to home as well. But I appreciate you and appreciate the thoughtfulness of your statement there. I would request that if it's appropriate that the article be shared for council consumption.
So thank you. Mr. Carey?
Yeah, this is excellent, and I don't recall last year's report. I will recall this one. This is really good, and it's an excellent explanation of how urban renewal districts work. So, for those not familiar in detail with it, this is a good read. And I particularly enjoyed the last page, which talked about the impact on other taxing agencies as a result of this, and especially in lieu of the letter that we sort of the finger wagging letter we got last time. The City of Monmouth General Fund and the Central School District are the ones that are the most impacted by it, at least initially. And I think Commissioner Oberst nailed it, and that everybody will be a winner in the end in his comment last time. So this is excellent. It's great. It's ready for prime time, could be utilized. I would like to have some of this, and when we get into our goal setting and especially as we begin to move towards budget, I'd like to have a good, clear understanding of this and decide whether or not we're going to continue, as we have sort of planned out the next 8 million. Likely we will, but I think it's worth having a discussion about how we might better utilize this.
Great. Thank you, John. Other questions or comments? All right. And we don't need to adopt this, I don't believe. Right?
Actually, you do
Yes,
need
we
to
do.
approve it to go to the council and to the other stakeholders, and then I will have to do a publication of notice and send it out to them.
That's right. We do have to approve this to forward to the council for their next meeting. So I will entertain that motion, which is in your packet.
I move that we forward to the council. They'll be interested to read that.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Carey moves and Ms. Salinas Oliveros seconds the motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Well, and any opposed or just not getting to the mic, Mr. Oberst, we'll take that as a. All right. He appears.
That's yes. I'm sorry. I was reading over a little piece there. I brain locked.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously, and I also vote aye, just so you know, because I can. And we will forward that on and share it with the stakeholders in the community, as Janet mentioned. So thank you very much. Any other business before the Urban Renewal Agency? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the urban renewal meeting thing.
Thank you, Carol. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And I hear no opposition. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. And that